From high-speed rail to soft power plays, China's influence in Southeast Asia is shifting. It's not just about muscle anymore, it's also about presence, perception and persuasion. With US-China tensions rising, the region is feeling the pressure and recalibrating its priorities. According to a 2025 survey by the IC's Yusof Institute, China remains Southeast Asia's most influential economic and political strategic power, ahead of the US by a significant margin. But that dominance comes with mixed feelings. Nearly 7 in 10 who see China as the top political strategic power say they're worried about its growing reach. Our CNA correspondents hit the ground across Southeast Asia to see how Beijing's influence is being felt and how locals are responding. And for that, we've got two of our reporters, Digi correspondents, Amir Yusof in Johor Bahru and Kiki Siregar, who is in Jakarta. They both join us now. But Amir, to you first. You've been looking into the topic of China's Belt and Road initiatives and its growing influence by funding all these infrastructure projects across Southeast Asia. How's the impact being felt?
Thanks, Jill. So there are two very polarized views on this issue. On the one hand, countries like Laos and Indonesia, we have seen how Belt and Road projects have improved the life of locals and helped to boost the economy. Cases in point are the Laos-China Railway, which runs from Vientiane to Kunming, as well as the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail. Now, these railways, which run on Chinese technology, give rural folks better accessibility and jobs. My colleague Kiki also spoke to locals in Jakarta, and naturally, people there are appreciative of China's contributions. Now, on the other hand, in the Philippines and even in Malaysia, we have seen BRI projects being abandoned or stalled or delayed. I visited the Malacca Gateway project, which has been downscaled from a 40 billion ringgit commercial and tourism development to a 600 million ringgit cruise center. Now, some locals complain about how this concept has become a white elephant, abandoned construction sites, reclaimed land that has been impacted the seafood catch of fishermen. So in this case, they don't perceive China's growing influence in a good light.
Now, talk to us a bit more about the Philippines in particular, because that's a really interesting case study because Manila and Beijing relations have been tense, particularly when it comes to issues in the South China Sea.
Yes, the Philippines is an extreme case, in which almost all or 95% of the Belt and Road initiatives being planned for are now cancelled. And people on the ground have been left frustrated with this reality. I visited Tagum City in the south, where the Mindanao Railway was slated to be constructed, but the plans have now been abandoned. So we spoke to rural villagers, and some of them related about how they were promised money for their land. Others were set to be rehomed to more modern neighborhoods, but all these plans are now in limbo. China's funding has stalled due to strained ties between Beijing and Manila. And I spoke to a former Philippine Supreme Court justice who expressed frustration with how he felt the government under then President Rodrigo Duterte was too lenient with China. And this is what he had to say.
Well, I don't think China really intended to give us the loans, because even during the time of President Duterte, they never gave us the loans. I mean, they dangled all of these loans to Duterte, $24 billion, in exchange for Duterte being very soft on China on the South China Sea, but nothing, less than 5% of their promises materialized. I mean, they took President Duterte for a ride.
So many Filipinos have this view, but analysts say that China's motivation for these infrastructural projects is mostly commercial, so that its private and government-linked firms can earn profits.
Okay, Amir, thanks for that. Well, I want to bring in Kiki next. And Kiki, you went to Timor-Leste as well as Morowali, that's in Indonesia, to see how China's infrastructure projects have helped develop these two countries. What are you seeing on the ground there?
Yes, so I went to Timor-Leste, Asia's youngest country, which became independent from Indonesia in 2002. And China was one of the first countries to recognize Timor-Leste's independence and gave support so Timor-Leste could develop the country. I was in Timor-Leste's capital, Dili, and also in Likisa on the outskirts of Dili. And I saw some of the infrastructure that was built with China's help, such as its presidential palace and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs building in Dili. I also went to a dump site in Likisa, which was still under construction by a Chinese company called China Harbor Engineering Company. Now, some people welcome the Chinese presence there as it creates job opportunities and helps develop the country. But some feel it has become increasingly dominant in recent years as many Chinese people have set up businesses in Timor-Leste, and the locals cannot compete with them because they are less experienced and have less capital. I had the chance to interview Timor-Leste's Prime Minister, Sanana Gusmao, and I asked him how local businesses can compete with Chinese merchants. And this is what he has to say.
We have to push, improve the culture of business, because the problem also is that we are importing everything, and in the economic field we have to change this. We have to start producing. I don't say that we are dependent on China. It will depend on now we are dependent on the import from ASEAN countries.
Now, Kiki, you...
So Timor-Leste...
Carry on.
So to wrap it up, Timor-Leste has many import partners, among them is China, but Indonesia actually tops the list, and Timor-Leste now wants to help its people so it becomes less dependent and reliant on imports, Jill.
Okay, I want to take you now to Indonesia, where you're based, and when you talk to people on the ground, what are they saying? Have their perceptions changed at all with all this wave of Chinese investments coming in recent years?
Well, Indonesia is also no stranger to Chinese infrastructure, and Amir briefly mentioned about the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed train, which was launched here about 1.5 years ago. It was the first Belt and Road Initiative project completed in Indonesia, but there are also other Chinese-backed projects in Indonesia. I went to Morowali, that's a regency in central Sulawesi province, and there is IMIP, a huge industrial park focusing on the production of stainless steel and nickel. It is 6,000 hectares, very large. It has about 94,000 workers. 10% of them are actually Chinese workers because IMIP has many Chinese tenants. It has about 56 tenants in total. So the Indonesian government said since IMIP's establishment in 2015, Morowali has been bustling because it used to be a sleepy regency. And the government is very happy about this. I spoke to a few people on the ground who said, yes, they are happy about IMIP's presence there because it has created job opportunities. But then there are also locals who say they're not so happy because it creates pollution. The water, I must say, IMIP faces the Banda Sea, which is known for its clean water, but since IMIP's presence, local fishermen say they have problems getting a catch, and a lot of people are saying Morowali is now very dusty, a lot of people get sick, and some workers also said to me that they're happy to work at IMIP or in Morowali, but they are concerned about the safety measures at their workplace.
Yeah, okay, now a quick question to both of you. Now that you have seen what people are saying on the ground and the situation today, how do you foresee China's economic and infrastructure influence in Southeast Asia going forward? Amir, you first.
Well, Jill, in the infrastructural sense, I think that China is pivoting slightly. Analysts I spoke to said that they are moving away from funding huge mega projects like railway lines to smaller projects like schools and hospitals. But the overall strategy of helping to fund projects is not dead in the water. Just in February, plans were announced for a Vietnam-China railway. So it will be interesting to see if China presses on with funding more bridges, railways, or highways in Southeast Asia or not, especially amid this tense trade war with the US.
Yeah, indeed. What about you, Kiki?
Well, analysts told me China's presence in Indonesia and Timor-Leste will only continue to grow. So the governments in both countries need to play a more active role so locals don't feel left out. Timor-Leste's government could, for example, provide local businesses with better access to finance and land ownership. Well, in general, there should be more social interactions between Chinese workers and locals so they understand each other, Jill.
All right, great to have both our digital colleagues on board. CNA digital correspondents Amir Yusof in Johor Bahru, Kiki Siregar in Jakarta. Thank you.